There we go. So welcome everybody to our orientation for new volunteers. This is a chance for you to kind of get to know us and to see what we're all about, to make sure that what you have said you want to do is in fact what you want to do. And tell you a little bit about our program. I'd like to start by introducing myself, and then there are maybe a half a dozen members of our program who are here today. So I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves as well. My name is Amy Smith-Moniz. I am the district coordinator for District 6, which is where you are. District 6 is basically Chester County plus Pottstown plus Devon. And we have about 13 sites, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. As a district coordinator, what I do is really help make sure that all the local sites are able to do what they need to do. So each site also has a leader, and that leader is the person on the spot when you're doing returns, working with volunteers very closely. As a district coordinator, I'm helping make sure they have what they need. I am also the training coordinator, and the first thing that people need is trained volunteers. So that's what our training team does. As we talk today, please hold us to account if we use acronyms and initialisms that you're not familiar with. So I will occasionally slip and say LC instead of local coordinator. I throw up a hand or yell out that you don't know what I'm talking about, and I will try to clarify. So I'm going to ask each of our current volunteers that are on the call to introduce themselves. I have 6 on my list. If anybody else is here, I'm going to ask you to jump up at the end. Could you please let us know what your role is in the program, how long you've been in the your name, your role, how long you've been in the program, and also what role you have that's going to touch these people. So if you are an instructor or if you are a local coordinator, and so you're going to be interacting with these folks later, let them know so they know to kind of expect that they may be hearing from you. And Steve, I'm going to start with you.
My name is Steve Connery. I have been in the program this will be my 18th year this next tax season. I have served in a variety of roles mostly around the training aspects for the program. I'm currently an instructor, also a counselor at the Kennett Senior Center site. So you'll see me in class for sure.
Jim McLaughlin.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name's Jim McLaughlin. This upcoming season will be my 21st. It's hard to believe, but that's what it is. I am an instructor. I have volunteered and will be volunteering and have volunteered at the Kennett site. I'm a counselor. I am an ERO. You're going to hear a lot of acronyms, but ERO, Electronic Return Originator, is one of them. I'm also have been a local coordinator, and I'm going to be a shift coordinator this upcoming year at Kennett.
Thanks, Kathy.
Hi, my name is Kathy Heaton. This is my first year. Always impressed. I think what you'll find when you go to these sites is how many people are there with so many years of experience. It's addictive. But I am a counselor. I may be a mentor this year. We will see. And I'm also involved on the state management team.
Thanks, Kathy. Nate? Nate, are you with us?
Yeah, I gotta turn my mic on. Yes, I've been with the program since tax year 2011. I've been a LC, I think, for 3 years at least. I took over from another guy who decided he wanted to retire. I've been at the Pottstown site the whole time. And I guess that just about covers it.
Okay, thanks, Nate. Susan S.
Yes, my name is Susan Shelf, and this is my 8th year. I've been a counselor at the Hankin Library. This year, I also have a new role. I will be shift coordinator for a new site that we're going to have at Surrey in Devon. And during your training classes, I'll be the one kind of coaching you through what we call the intake and interview sheet, which is the form that the customer fills out that tells you what you're going to be doing when you prepare their return.
Thanks, Susan. Donna.
This will be my second year with the organization. Last year, I was a facilitator at both Kennett and Westchester. And I will be taking on a new role this year at local coordinator at Westchester.
Thanks, Donna. Jim Liebeck.
Hi, everyone. This is Jim. This is my second year with AARP doing taxes. I am a counselor at the Phoenixville site, Amy's site, and I will be taking on a new role as an acting LC for a new trial that we're going to attempt to do evening hours in Phoenixville. And I also am going to act as a mentor for training.
Thanks, Jim. Did anybody get on afterwards that I missed, or are all our experienced people accounted for?
Here, Susan Cook.
There we go.
This will be my second year as a tax counselor, and I volunteer at the Kennett Square site. And this year I'm going to assist with some of the training.
Great. Is that everybody? Okay, good. Thank you. And one of the things that I hope you all noticed was the variety of levels of experience. We have lots of people in the 10 to 20 year range. We have lots of new people in the 1 to 2 year range. And I'm really excited that especially those newer people are willing to come back and also be involved with you as new volunteers, because they remember what it was like when they started out as a volunteer. So a little bit of housekeeping. So today's agenda, these are the things we're going to talk about. But before that, as far as the Google Meet goes, if you have your camera on or off, it does not matter, but we do ask that you stay muted unless you're actually asking a question. It just helps with the background noise. You may find me mute and disappear. It's because I have super loud dogs. If that happens, Steve will talk for me. If you need to leave for any reason, you need to run, do something, your dogs are barking, whatever, no need to tell us. We're all adults. Do what you need to do. Jim is taking attendance. And Jim, I think everybody is here with a name. Sometimes people call in and we have to ask them who they are, but I think everybody is here with a name, so we're good. But he may be asking folks to identify themselves so he can match them up to his sheet. There are a couple of features of the Google Meet that I want to make sure that you know about. The first is down at the bottom, there are a series of circles. And the first one is your microphone. If you click that one, you can mute it or unmute it. The next one is your video. Clicking that mutes or unmutes. The next one is closed captioning. If you're having trouble understanding what I'm saying, putting on the closed captioning can help. I will say it sometimes makes up things and they're pretty entertaining, but it's not bad. The next one is a smiley face. That's the one that gives you an opportunity to react to what we're saying by throwing a smiling face or a thumbs up or a heart on the screen. The next one is the box with the arrow. That's what we use to present. You don't need that today. The next one is a hand. If you have a question and it is something that is immediate, like you just said something and I have no idea what that meant, raise the hand. Otherwise, if you keep on moving to the right, there's something that looks like a cartoon balloon. It's a square with lines in it. That's the chat. And if you click that, it will bring up the chat box. And I am going to put something in the chat box that now you should all be able to see. And it says, Amy says hi. At the bottom is where you type. So if you have a question that's maybe a little bit more than I just didn't get that LC thing, or it's something that can wait, you can go ahead and just type it into the chat. And either one of our experienced people will just answer it in the chat, or they'll stop me later on and say, hey, Amy, we have a question. And then we go ahead and answer it then. So what we'll talk about today, who are we and what do we do? We'll talk about what our volunteers do. how to certify. And then at the end, I'm going to ask all of you who are support facilitators and client facilitators to go ahead and go about your day. And I'm going to keep the potential counselors on, and we'll go over some things that are specific to our tax counselors. So AARP Foundation Tax Aid is this is our who we are. And here's our mission. It's to serve vulnerable people 50 and older. And that's the entire AARP Foundation mission. We focus on people 50 and older, but we are not limited to serving people 50 and older. So if a taxpayer comes in and their return is within the scope of our training, we will do their return regardless of age. We do not send the young people away. The program is more than 60 years old, and it's pretty big. You take a look at this year, 2024, the tax season statistics across the country. There are 3,500 sites and 28,000 volunteers. I'm going to just insert this as well. There are 20 paid staff. So when we say this is a volunteer-led organization, we really mean that. The staff offers us guidance, they help us out, they provide us resources, but much of the work is obviously done by these 28,000 volunteers. Those 28,000 volunteers created 1.1 million federal returns, serving 1.7 million taxpayers, and refunded over $1 billion. EITC is a specific earned income tax credit. Over 100 million people received that. One of the things that we do not worry about is running out of people to serve. There are plenty of people out there that need our service. And even though we served 1.1 million, there are 99 million more that are kind of in our wheelhouse that we could be serving. In our district, last year we had about 75 volunteers. We had 13 sites in Chester and Montgomery counties this year. Last year we had 2,803 federal returns accepted. And when we say accepted, it just means that we filed it and it was accepted electronically. Some of those are actually rejected and we have to then paper file it, but that's a very small number. Pennsylvania returns, 2,782. The reason the number is different is because some people move to Pennsylvania and don't have a Pennsylvania return required. So why might you volunteer? Maybe I'm preaching to the choir here because you guys have already signed up to volunteer, but I'll just remind you that it's fun. Taxes, woohoo! But we really do have a good time at our sites and with our clients. If you're looking for a little bit of a mental challenge, tax preparation will definitely offer you that. It keeps you involved in your community by helping the people in your community. Additionally, you have that team of people around you that you can work with. And we do tell our counselors, you are not on an island. It is not you in a tiny room all alone preparing a tax return. You have a team around you that's there to help. And eventually you can prepare your own return. And if you've already been doing that for many years, you can continue to do TurboTax, but you can also use our software to do your own return. And about the time it's getting really nice outside, you're done, because most of our volunteers are done by April 15th. Does anybody here have another reason that they're volunteering, that they feel like volunteering is a great idea?
So Amy, I would say if you're looking to do something to give back, I love all your reasons. It also gives your life a purpose. You feel like you have meaning and you've done so much for somebody else, but you do something for yourself as well. It's pretty much a win-win.
I absolutely agree. And for many years, a lot more of my time was spent cleaning my house than was spent on this job. I get way more satisfaction from this job than I ever did from cleaning my house. It absolutely gives back to you as well.
I have something I'd like to add. I had many volunteer jobs since I retired, and this is the first one where I felt useful, because many volunteer jobs, they don't want to give you any item of importance. You know, you sit there and wait for the phone to ring and it doesn't ring. And so I really enjoy contributing through this volunteer activity.
And you are very valued, I mean, by us in the program, but also by our clients. They so appreciate the work that we do for them, and what you're doing is important. And I'm so glad you brought that up. So what do our volunteers do? At the very basic level, our counselors prepare individual federal and Pennsylvania tax returns. That includes the local return. It also includes the property tax rent rebate. So all of that one-stop shopping for our clients. Some people don't need their tax return prepared, or maybe they're going to have their tax return prepared later, but they come in and ask questions. Now, if the question is, I prepared my return, will you look over it and tell me if it's right? The answer is no. But if the question is, my daughter has this situation and this and that, and what do I do? Or does my mom need to file? Or do I qualify for the rebate? Yeah, we can just answer the question for them. We prepare amended returns, although we definitely prefer very strongly that those are returns that we prepared the first time. But not everyone is a tax counselor. We also have volunteers that do other roles. Our client facilitator is the first face of our sites. The client facilitator is usually the first person that a taxpayer sees. They greet them. They make them feel comfortable. And one of the ways it was described to me is that when taxpayers come in, they're coming into you naked. Like they are going to take all their clothes off and show you all of their financial information. And it's a very vulnerable feeling. The client facilitator is the first person who has the opportunity to start making them feel more comfortable and to making them relax and not be afraid of the process. Lots of people are afraid of the IRS. They don't need to be afraid of us. We're there to help them. And the client facilitator is the first person they see that starts to send that message. The client facilitator also does some very concrete organizational work for us in terms of, checking where the person is on the schedule, making sure they have their documents. Some client facilitators put the documents in order and get everything prepared for the counselor. Exactly what the client facilitator does is determined by the local coordinator at each site. But at every site, the client facilitator is that first person that greets our taxpayers. Communication specialist, we don't have one. I would love to have one, but a communication specialist handles communication with the rest of the world. So they're the ones who would contact the newspapers and maybe do some promotion for the program. They might ask the sites to put out flyers, things like that. So when we're trying to promote the program and looking for volunteers, our communication specialist would handle that. We have site leaders, and as you've learned today, some of our site leaders do not have a lot of tax preparation experience, because leading a site doesn't mean you do taxes. It means you coordinate the things at the site. And you do not need to know tax law to order paper and build a team and make a schedule. So all of those leadership tasks, you don't need tax preparation experience for. We have technical specialists that help us at our sites and in the district. We also have instructors, which you should already know about, and mentors. You're never alone. There is always someone around to help you. So anytime that you are feeling lost and alone, it means that you need to reach out to somebody. And it might be an instructor or a mentor during training or a local coordinator once you're at a site. So I do have one of our newish volunteers to talk about the day in a life of a volunteer. She was, Kathy, as she said, is completing her first year. And what I'd like for her to do is tell you a little bit about what it was like for her to go through the training process and then show up at a tax site that first day and then show up at a tax site that last day.
Wow.
Kathy,
Wow.
no pressure.
So I had recently retired and I was looking for something where I could contribute. I do volunteer at a therapeutic riding, and while I enjoyed that, I think I was looking for something with a little bit more mental challenge too. And I felt I can do taxes even though I have no background. So the one thing I will put out there is that I missed it, I guess. I was not as prepared for the amount of time needed to be dedicated to the training. And so appreciative that that training is done, because it does help you feel somewhat like you know what you're doing. I think we all sat in the class and went, well, we have the answer. What do we do in a real life situation? How do I know if I'm right? How do I know if I've done something correctly or not? And to go behind on Amy's discussion on the client facilitators, while they welcome the person in, they also are asking them questions from the intake interview sheet. They are also trying to determine whether they're in scope. But you might find you can't, well, not that you might find, you will find you can't skip doing that interview intake sheet, because people may answer things differently that bring other things into your scope. So to emphasize behind Amy, at least in Phoenixville, where my experience has been, the team is so supportive. The team is there to make sure you're successful. They're always checking with you, not because they doubt you, but because they want you to know they're there for you. The thing that you learn too is you're not going to just, reach over to my neighbor because they're also doing tax counseling, but you have resources available to you that you can look up to try and find out, how do you handle this situation? And I think the thing that amazed me the first time I asked someone a question was they pulled out the book and had to look it up to figure it out. So it's not as if, they know the answers. Everybody's doing research together. And sometimes that involves a conversation among several of you to say, how do you interpret this? Are you good with this? Are we doing right by the client? So I know I left training thinking, I think I have a general idea of how to do taxes. And there are certain areas I'm not as comfortable in. And walked in the first day thinking, somebody's going to let me process their taxes? It was like walking out of the hospital with the baby the first time. Really? But they're very kind to you, and they don't give you the most difficult taxes those first few days that you're in there, so that you get comfortable with the software, with interacting with the clients, and you start to learn the team members. And it didn't take long at all to feel assimilated within and part of the team, and comfortable saying, I don't know. And so it, for me, turned out to be an extremely rewarding experience, and one that I know I will continue to do as long as Amy continues to have me. Was that good enough, Amy? Questions from anyone?
I muted, talked while I was muting again.
Yes, I noticed.
That's who I am. Thank you. I loved that. The only thing that I would like for you to give us is a bit of a comparison of how it felt at the end of the season compared to the beginning of the season.
So at the end of the season, you don't feel like you're walking into, what in God's name am I walking into? You do feel you've learned a lot, you're competent at a lot. I don't know that I still felt totally confident in, is this in scope or not in scope? But I also don't feel you get that many complex returns that challenge that. So I think I would still question myself if I hadn't asked the question to, if a awkward subject came up. But by the end of the season, you felt so much part of the team. You felt confident taking those clients on, instead of me thinking, are you just a simple one? Sure, come on over to my desk and we'll figure it out. And I think when I was in training, I thought, how do I do this with the person sitting straight in front of me? This is going to feel so awkward. Do they see the screen I see? How? But the people, for the most part, are coming back year after year. They're comfortable with the process. They bring what they did the year before. They have it available to you. And it's okay to have silence. Like I could not carry a continual conversation and focus on doing the taxes. And I think when I first started, I felt I had to do that. And then I learned it was okay to just focus on getting the taxes done, having that in front of you, and you actually feel somewhat confident in what you were then saying. Do you agree? Do you, because you are emphasizing to them that they are responsible for understanding the numbers and walking away with it. So it's not as if you did it and they're not a participant. You walk them through and help them understand everything on their tax forms and why they're paying or why they're getting a refund. And Amy, I think one of the more difficult parts when I first started was I didn't understand there was an order to put all the papers together in to then enable the quality review person to be able to then go through it in a particular fashion. And learning that order really helped you feel like you could work better with your teammates. So at the end, you felt far more successful that way than I think the first few days where I went, what page goes next? And what do I staple together? And what has to be included in what envelope?
Here's a pile.
Yeah, right. What do I do with this? So obviously far more confident at the end. What did I do? 2 days a week, right?
Yeah.
So 2 days a week for whatever time we're in there, 8 weeks. There's a huge amount of growth in your own level of confidence to feel like you really can help people and you're doing it in a very high quality fashion. And I think that's one of the things that should get emphasized is quality. It's not about, oh, I got 5 done today and my neighbor got 10, so I have to do faster. No, do quality. Make sure the taxes are correct and it's okay that you're slower.
100% yes. And Kathy pointed out something that is a part of that not being on an island is you don't complete a return and then hand it off to the taxpayer. Someone else reviews that. There is always a second set of eyes that looks over every piece of paper that the taxpayer gave you, the interview sheet, talks to the taxpayer, and looks over that return. So even if you do make a mistake, and trust me,
You
you will
will.
make a mistake. That's part of the process. But the quality reviewer then can find those mistakes and correct them. And if you're new, they will probably call you over and say, this is something that you did wrong. Just try to remember that next time. It's not, there are no demerits.
It could be as simple as just having transposed a number. Like you didn't see the number correctly and the quality reviewer will see that number differently. And it's okay. We all want to be right in getting things correct and not look like we're not. But that's one of the biggest things is rely on these experienced people. They've been doing it a long time. And whether you realize it or not, you're going to have a little bit of nerves in doing it. And so you might make mistakes. It's okay. The team is not looking, as Amy said, you're not getting demerits. They're not going to kick you off the team. They really want you. So just keep trying.
That's great. Anybody have questions for Kathy? Cool. We will move on. Thanks, Kathy. Oh, yeah, Frank? You'll have to unmute.
There it goes. Yeah, I just had a question. As far as, Kathy, you said like if you have, suppose you have a client, we have these appointment slots, I take it, and suppose you run over time on the appointment, do you send the client away and finish it later, or how do you handle that?
And I know that we've had a client where something more complex came up and they'll look at you as because they've paid for the parking outside. And so you feel guilty. You feel like, here, have another $1 to pay for the parking. But no, you would finish up with them. You wouldn't send them away. Amy, I'm not aware of us ever having sent anyone away, maybe one of the other sites.
There are very rare instances where we send somebody away. It's more common to send someone away because they didn't bring something we need. But there have been times where it has been so much, or it's toward the end of the day and we need to be out by 3 or whatever, where we'll say, we'll bring it in. We try to build enough flexibility in our schedule so that we can handle people that go over. And at least at Phoenixville, we do build into our schedule open slots. So if we have to bring someone back, there's a place to put them.
Okay.
But it's rare, like Kathy said. Mostly we just plow through it. Anything else?
Sounds good.
Can I reemphasize again, or maybe you're going to do that when you talk to them? They say 40 hours of training, and I didn't understand how that training was happening. And I thought 40 hours, but it's spread over a period of time in January, which is great because you need time to work through the cases and understand what you're doing. And so it's more 40 hours of interacting, but there's more time that you want to put into this so that you can get certified and pass the test. So just allow yourselves that time. It's January, it's cold, you want to be inside, why not? But just so that you understand, there is a time commitment there.
Yep, and we will talk a little bit about more when we have just the counselors on. But thank you. Okay, so get on the right screen. The other roles, we've kind of talked about those: client facilitators, counselors, and then in the district, technology people, we use administrative people to do, handle our lists. We have training coordinators, and the training team is, and if you are coming to training, you're going to meet them all. We have a training coordinator, we have instructors, and then we also have counselors who are mentors who will work with you one-on-one. So there's a lot of people on our training team. And then communication coordinators and support facilitators. One of the questions you might have, and kind of goes with Kathy's being nervous about handling somebody else's taxes, is what if I get it wrong? Well, the answer is that you are protected from liability as long as you are working within the scope of our program and your training. So if you decide that, you know what, you're pretty sure you know how to do this and you're just going to dive right in, you are not protected. But if you've been trained on it and it's within the scope of our program, then the Volunteer Protection Act protects you from liability. You have to follow our tax aid policies and procedures, and you cannot knowingly prepare a fraudulent return. One of the things I'm just going to point out here is if you are coming to us from some other tax world, either the private world, the paid world, or maybe VITA, it's just really important that even though you have a lot of tax knowledge, you make sure that you're following our scope and our policies, because they may not be the same as where you came from, but you're not protected if you're not following our policies. So just be aware of that, please. One of the things all the volunteers will do is to agree to abide by the IRS Volunteer Standards of Conduct. And the agreement is a contract that you sign that says, I will follow these standards of conduct. You also have to take a test that shows that you have, that you understand what the volunteer standards of conduct are. And they're right here, they're VSC, Volunteer Standard of Conduct, that you follow the quality site requirements. There are 10 of those. I'm not going to list them. You cannot accept payment for doing someone's return. You can't ask for donations. Some people will make donations to our host site, so they'll donate to the senior center, but they do not donate to us. If they are really dead set on making a donation to us, we can send them to the foundation and they can make a donation there. Most people are happy to just donate to the senior center. You can't.
Amy,
Yep,
I'm
go
gonna
ahead.
interrupt. There's some. This has got some animation on it. If you want to hit.
Oh, it does?
Yes.
That's fun. Why it's not happening? There we go. Oh, look at that. You can't solicit business from taxpayers. So even though the taxpayer tells you, oh, I am so looking for a financial advisor, you cannot recommend your financial advisor. You can't take their names home to send out for your multi-level marketing business. That information from our clients is private. It stays within the program. You cannot knowingly prepare a false return. If someone comes in and tells you something and then says, oh, you don't need to put that, yeah, I got $1,000 dog walking, but you don't need to put that on the return. Yeah, you do. You heard it. You know that if you don't put it on there, it's a false return. You cannot be criminal or infamous. So if we find you in the papers because you have done some robbed a bank, been notoriously disgraceful, you can be removed from the program. I have not had to do that yet. I'm pretty happy I haven't had to remove anyone for being notoriously disgraceful. And you're going to treat all taxpayers in a professional, courteous, and respectful manner. As I said before, we do not discriminate based on age. We don't discriminate based on anything else either. So make sure that you're treating all taxpayers in a professional, courteous, and respectful manner. If they are within our scope of service, then we will serve them. A little bit about the time commitment. You will have several certifications and training requirements to go through. And if you are a support facilitator or a client facilitator, we're talking about, for support facilitator, a couple of hours, maybe a little bit more than that on the specific training for your task. If you are training to be a counselor, as Kathy said, it is much more. And it is not, please don't think that you're going to train with us and then be able to open your own tax service. Our scope is narrow based on the clients that we see, and it's really specific to the tax program that we use. During the tax season, we'll expect that you'll work 6 to 8 hours a week, 1 to 2 days a week, kind of depending on your situation. Our volunteer shifts are usually 5 to 6 hours. But you are a volunteer, and if you go away in the middle of March every year, you know, we can work that into our schedule. We can work with you on that. But please don't go into this thinking that it's not a big commitment, because it is. And if you are thinking that you're not quite sure you're ready to make that commitment, have a conversation with me later on today or tomorrow, and let's figure that out, because you don't want to get halfway through the training and then say, oh, this is too much time. Go ahead and if you're going to quit now. We want to be respectful of your time. We also need for you to be respectful of our time and resources. So to be a tax counselor, you need to have some basic computer skills, be able to, get into a window, open a new tab, use downloaded documents. But we will teach you how to use the tax software and the tax knowledge that you need, and how to access the resources that will help you to prepare the taxes. An instructor, another counselor, a mentor is always nearby. So you will always have access to those people in training and then also at the sites. For all volunteers, we need to know that you can access the volunteer portal, which is the AARP volunteer portal, and get the training materials you need. That you can access Link and Learn Taxes, which is the IRS site where some of your testing is, and that you can access the IRS forms and publications that you need. There's going to be some stuff that we hand out. One of the things that we'll hand out is a test that looks like this. It's a whole booklet. It's every test in the world. Not everybody does all these pages. And make sure that you know how to find the things that you need to find online. For the tax counselors, those 40 or 50 hours are going to be basic tax law. The interview techniques, there are 2 people on this call that are going to train you on doing the interview, because the only person who knows what should be on that return is the taxpayer, and we need to get it out of them. How to use the Chromebooks, which is what we use to prepare all our taxes. How to access materials, how to log on and use TaxSlayer, which is our program, and how to prepare basic tax returns. So tax counselors will need to participate in training classes, show that they're competent, show their competence by preparing for returns and their assigned practice returns. The test that we take is called the Advanced Certification Test, and you have to pass it with 80%. I'm going to say right now, I'll say it again, if you do not pass the first time, it will offer you an opportunity to retake it. Do not retake it before you talk to me. So if you fail the first time, wait. We'll work it out. You're also passing the Standards of Conduct test, which is that ethics test, and an intake and interview test, because the interview is so important. There are 2 learning management system classes that you take on the AARP portal. One is tax aid policies and procedures, and the other is security and technology. And I think they're like 20 to 30 minutes apiece. And all of those have to be completed before you ever touch a taxpayer return. And I'm actually going to give you different dates because you're going to need to finish those way before you touch a taxpayer return. For everybody else, client facilitators, you will have a training class in January. Everyone is going to pass the standards of conduct test. Client facilitators are going to pass the intake and interview test. Everybody is going to take the LMS classes. And support facilitators, if you're helping with scheduling, there will be a training for you to learn how to use the scheduling software. There has not been a date for that set yet, but it possibly will be in December. Okay, so we're going to just take a look at the Lincoln Learn, which is the IRS site where you would go to, you can do some training there and also to take the tests. Everything you see, you will have access to this slideshow later. So you do not need to take notes. I really want you just to get a feel for what it's going to look like and what information they're going to ask for so that when you see it, it looks familiar because it's a little bit, it's new this year.
I'm going to interrupt.
Yep.
One minute because we've got acronyms again. The IRS funds 2 grant programs to organizations that provide tax service. Volunteer Income Tax Assistance, which is VITA, and they do have an income limit, and Tax Counseling for the Elderly, which does not have an income limit. AARP Foundation Tax Aid receives grants under both programs, but that's what you'll hear VITA and TCE a number of times, and that's what they stand for.
Thank you. So Lincoln Learn is the same, like it is the website that is linklearncertification.com. And it's 2 different things. It's learning and it's certification. So there's training on there, and then there's also the place where you take your tests. And the very first thing you're going to want to do is to create an account. And you're going to be as I go through these, you're going to be following my big red arrows because I love arrows. So you're going to get to a page that looks like this, and then you're going to sign in or create an account. And so obviously you can't log in until you have an account. And they're going to ask you for an email address, your first name, your last name, and you're going to create a password. Please use your real name, not your nickname. The IRS would like to know your real name. So first name, last name, create a password. And we'll talk about passwords more later, but just make sure that you keep track of this password because you're going to get on this site every year. So if you come back next year, you'll be once again getting on the Lincoln Learn site. It's going to ask you for your address and your zip code. And then it's going to ask you a couple of specific questions. The training source. For us, it's called Publication 4491. It's the textbook we use. You're not an instructor, so select no. You are not a territory manager, select no. IRS spec, and Steve, you would have to come in and tell me what spec stands for, but those are our partners at the IRS that we liaison with. Steve,
I don't remember.
It's
Something
partner education, something, but we always call them spec. And then when it comes time to take the test, you've logged in, you've created your account, you've logged in, now you're ready to take a test. You're going to see at the top, it shows that you have zeros. You have not completed any tests yet. You're going to go to the 2024 VITA TCE, which Steve just talked about, certification tests, and you're going to take a certification test. And this is assuming you've already kind of done the training and understand you're ready to take the test. Even if you are a client facilitator or a support facilitator, please go to the advanced test because they hide the early tests underneath So we'll go to the advanced test. And the two that our client facilitators will take are volunteer standards of conduct and intake and interview. Our support facilitators are only required to take volunteer standards of conduct. Counselors, you will also take both of these. When you pull up the test, it's going to show up with test questions one screen at a time, just like an LMS does. So this is further down. You can see advanced test. Counselors, you'll then take, after you take the other two, you'll take the advanced test. Now, this is the stuff that I wanted to show you that you can do beforehand. Once you get into the test page, you have to like go into the tests that I just showed you. I'm going to back up and try to be more clear. When you're on this page, if you keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, you'll get down to resources, and that's where they hide the training. So the intake, interview, and quality review training is here, and also the volunteer standards of conduct ethics training. So before you take those tests, you can pop down here and take the tests, then scroll back up and do the training. So you do the training, you take the test, you passed it, great. What do you do next? Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to go home. So you have to choose this arrow down here. You have to choose the home. And then once you're home, look, it shows that I passed a test. So I can go down to this second box, which is the volunteer agreement. That volunteer agreement is what I need because it shows that you passed the test. So once you get to the volunteer agreement, again, all of this stuff is going to be available to you. You don't need to remember it, but you're going to put in the name of the sponsoring partner, which is AARP Foundation TaxAid, the years you have volunteered. For most of you, you have not volunteered in the past, but if you were a VITA volunteer in the past and you put in 2 years, you go ahead and put in your 2 years. So whatever the number is, you enter it, and then it will carry forward. So I don't think you need to change it every year. No promises. Whoops, sorry, that was my bad. If you are a professional and you want CE credits, you might need to put in your professional designation, but most of you are just going to pick TCE, which Steve said is Tax Counseling for the Elderly, AARP volunteer. You're going to say that you agree to sign the form electronically, and then you're going to click the button to sign it. And signing it is, I believe, typing your name. And then you're going to download the signed form, because eventually you're going to need to send me that downloaded form. I will send you later the instructions on what to name it, because there will be specific naming of the document so that I know who it is. And this is what it looks like. So when you get it, all of this red stuff will be filled in, and whatever test you've taken will have a P to show that you passed. So it doesn't show your score. It only shows if you passed or not. If you were to print out that volunteer document that you received, this is what it looks like. You do not need to print it out. So that is the first part of our orientation. And now what happens next? So the question is, after learning what you've learned so far, is this still for you? Are you still interested in volunteering? And before I ask that question, I should probably say, are there questions before we go any further? Okay, so if you say no, or I'm not sure, or maybe not this year, there's no shame. There is no shame in not volunteering. Just let me know, please. And what you're going to do is let me know that either this is not for you and you are out, in which case I will code you as what's called no match, which takes you out of our system. Or you might say, you know, I am interested, but I don't think I can do it this year. Let me know. And then I put you on hold. And if I put you on hold, then we reach out to you next year and say, okay, we put you on hold last year. Now, would you like to join our training class for this year? So that's the first thing, is if you're a no, let us know. Are you a yes? Yay, glad to hear it. Could you please verify with me the site assignment that I sent to you earlier? So if I said that you're going to be at Phoenixville on Tuesdays, just let me know, yes, that's still good. But honestly, what I need to know is, are you planning to be a counselor or a client facilitator or I don't remember what the site facilitator, is that what that's called? Anyway, and you will be completing the LMS modules. So that's going to kind of be your next step, is to get into the portal and complete the LMS modules. And again, I'll send you the instructions how to do that once I've got you verified on my list. So here are some of the deadlines. Our deadlines are always somewhat flexible because we understand that stuff happens. But this is what we would like to have happen. We would like you to complete all your required testing as soon as possible, excluding the tax law test. So for support facilitators, we would love to have you do the volunteer standards of conduct and the 2 LMS modules by Friday, because as I mentioned, you have training coming up, but I can't do the training until you're a volunteer. So I need to have that information, those tests done, so I can change you to make you a volunteer. Client facilitators, I would love for you to have your testing done by December 20th. And again, we're talking about the LMS modules and the standards of conduct. You will get all this in an email following up from this. Counselors, LMS and standards of conduct by December 20th, which is our first training day for counselors. Okay, so we're going to take a break. So first of all, I'm going to once again open it up for any questions. So if you have questions, this would be the time before we break.
Can I make a comment first?
Absolutely, Jim.
This is Jim McLaughlin. This is like a information dump. I'm a 21-year volunteer in this program, and the hardest thing you're going to do, getting over the hump of commitment and time and confusion and documents, is training and certification. The most fun you'll have is when you're at the site doing tax returns. So don't be discouraged. There was a time a few years back when a lot of the documents we used for training were actually paper copies. And you would walk out of the first day of training with a foot of documents and books and things to do. And you'd say, I'm never going to get through this stuff. This will be the hardest thing you do. So don't get discouraged up front. If you have any inkling that you want to do this, but are not sure you can get through all of this, don't be discouraged by the upfront apparent, I'm going to use the word bureaucratic stuff. No offense, Amy, but there's a lot of stuff that these organizations make you go through up front, and it's not as onerous as it appears, and you will have help. We are going to have, I presume, a good cadre of mentors to help new volunteers work their way through these things. It can be confusing. You got to go to this site, you got to go to that site, you got to do this, you got to do that. It sounds like a lot, and it is up front, and there is a time commitment, but don't be too discouraged up front.
And one of the reasons that I give you this December 20th deadline or the 13th deadline to get the administrative stuff out of the way is so that it can be out of the way and just not even think about that nonsense anymore. Kathy.
Totally agree with everything Jim said, because I think you do get overwhelmed with the amount of dump that comes at you during training, which has to. And as Amy also, it will come out in the training, is when you're in the actual environment doing the work, a lot of, I don't want to say it that way. Many things that you may have been exposed to in training, you're never going to see when you're doing taxes So you'll feel like, oh my gosh, I'll never get all this stuff. You don't have to. And you have your team there to support you. But the one thing I wanted to bring up is when you're in training, if for some reason you feel, I don't see myself being able to be a counselor, you can change and decide to be a client site facilitator at that point, and vice versa. You could be coming in as, I just want to be in the upfront, but oh my God, this stuff's really exciting and fun. I want to be a counselor. So you do have opportunities along the way during training to make new decisions. Don't make a negative decision today. It is really fun. It's a little overwhelming, but then it's really fun.
And additionally, there are people that change from year to year. And there are people who train as tax counselors, but only want to do client facilitating. They just want to understand the tax law to do their other job. So there's a lot of flexibility once you're in. I'm sorry, I'm working on Susan. I'm going to hold you for a second and get a question from Mike Elliott, because he's one of our prospective volunteers.
Yeah. If we certify at the advanced level for VITA, do we have to also certify
Same
again at
test.
the advanced level? For
It's the same test. Hand me your
okay.
your volunteer agreement. I just need a copy of your volunteer agreement.
Okay. And the 4012 resource guide for VITA is the same as the 4491?
It is not. And actually, Mike, I'm going to ask you to hold that thought
Okay.
until we send our support facilitators away and our client facilitators away. And then when we have only counselors, we'll talk more. We'll talk shop.
Okay, great. Okay.
Susan.
No, my comments were covered. No.
Okay, great. Nate. Nate, did you unmute?
Oh, there we go.
There you go. You're going to receive an email from me with the next steps. If you decide you don't want to do the next steps, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to assume you're in. Let's do it that way. And then you guys are done for today. So go enjoy your beautiful Sunday. Those of you who are planning to come in as a tax counselor, let's take, it's 9:58. Let's take until 10:05 to go grab another cup of coffee, whatever, and then we'll come back. So client facilitators and support facilitators, goodbye and thank you. Counselors, starting back up. The first thing we're going to talk a little bit about is, again, we're now, everyone here is either already a volunteer or a potential tax counselor. And one of the things that we've done is TaxAid has gone to using Chromebooks, and everyone is assigned a Chromebook to use. That means that the Chromebooks are handled nationally, centrally, so that they all have the same security. They're all very consistent. A Chromebook's a Chromebook is a Chromebook, although some of them have number pads and some of them don't. Additionally, we have Google Workspace. So we have all of the Google apps available to us, which means we have a word processing document, a spreadsheet app. We have a Forms app, which you filled out when you said which things you were interested in doing, all of that, and the Google Drive. So all of that suite of apps is available on our Chromebooks. When you come to the December 20th training, you will have a Chromebook to use for your training and certification. We'll spend a bit of time showing you how to log in, how to use it. It's to be used only for TaxAid stuff. So we're using it to practice, to train, to take tests, but not to watch movies. Although there are training videos, you can absolutely watch training videos. If you decide that you would like to try to get on Amazon and do a little shopping, you'll find that the site is blocked. But there are other sites that are not blocked that you still should not be on if it's not related to tax training. It's an AARP computer, use it for the stuff. That Chromebook then goes with you to your site where you're volunteering. If you end up not being able to complete the training, have to leave the program for whatever reason, you are expected to return the Chromebook. And just to be helpful, On the back of the hang tag on every Chromebook case is my phone number. So if you can't reach your local coordinator to return the Chromebook, you reach out to me. Nate, what do you got for us?
Oh, okay. A couple of things in prior year. First of all, I know I've given out one or two to people that I know are coming back. In prior years, they would almost get up. Some of them couldn't use their Chromebook the first day we opened our site because it hadn't been set up. And are they going to do that again, or are they going to let them sign into it? Because I know that's probably out of your control, but it irked me when that happened.
Right. So,
Amy, let
there
me
are
make a
two.
comment.
Go ahead, Jim.
I'm only going to speak for Ray Dessendorf and Kennett, but the known returning volunteers at Kennett already have their Chromebooks, and they were given instructions on how to set up their tax year 24 user ID to access the Chromebooks. There is a document, and I don't remember the number on it, Amy. I think you've already sent it out to people.
C11.
Yes, that explains how to do it, and I'm aware that at least some of our people at Kennett have already done that and are already in the Chromebooks.
Okay, so I'm gonna just circle this back into these are new volunteers, so they don't need to know that. But what they do need to know, and this is part of what Nate was talking about, is that when you go from being a prospective volunteer to being a certified volunteer, there is a transition period where you have to be activated in the system. And it's not instant. It takes like a week because the very last step is done nationally and manually. So what will happen is that when you tell me that you give me your volunteer agreement and you're certified, you've finished your practice problems, you've done your PA state certification test, you've taken all your LMS, you have completed all of the certification requirements. At that time, I submit your name to National along with your site, with your assignment, which is the site where you're going to be. Then it takes a few days, maybe a week, before your Chromebook will work for doing tax returns. So that is the transition that we have to wait for. Normally it's not a problem because we finish our training and our certification by the end of January, and most of our sites don't open until after the first week in February. So just be aware that there is just that little bit of time where that happens. So if you are brand new to taxes, I'm just going to tell you that the training is intense. It is in person. It is in January. If you cannot attend all or some of the dates in January, there is a self-study option. So you would need to reach out and say, I can't be there on this day. I would look and say, okay, on that day, we're discussing interest, dividends, and capital gains. And I would point you to the self-study so that you could make sure that you caught up on that on your own. Our training is basically you do some reading, maybe watch a video before the class. During the class, we talk about the topic and we show you how to put it into a return. We do examples together. There's a lot of hands-on in class. And then you may, for the next class, have to maybe complete one more step in the return to practice what we've learned. So that's kind of the way it works. The classes are not consecutive. So it's like approximately 2 days a week every week. So there's time in between for you to do the pre-work, for you to practice the returns, as Kathy was saying, doing that sort of out of class work. It also gives you time for some of that information to sink in and stick. Whereas when you do the very intensive day after day after day after day, by the time you get to day 10, day 1 is gone. So we try to spread it out a little bit. Yeah, Eileen.
Amy, I was just going to add to that our objective for new volunteers is that you can handle the typical tax returns we see. We get a lot of seniors. They come in with Social Security, retirement, maybe some interest. Those are pretty straightforward. You also have to be able to pass the advanced test, so we'll deal with the topics that are included in that. But we're not trying to prepare you with a fire hose. We're trying to give you what you really need to get going, to get started, and to get comfortable with the process.
So we'll spend a lot of time practicing the stuff Steve's talking about, the stuff that's in our wheelhouse. A lot of the other stuff, we have to cover it because it's on the test. But a lot of things, we just want you to know it's out there, because once you know it's out there, then when you see it, you know, this is a thing that I need to look up or I need to ask about. Because we don't ever want you to be confronted with something where what you're thinking is, I have never in my life heard this. So we just want to make it out there so that so that you know to look for it. Eileen, go ahead, please.
Oh, yes. All those dates in January, are they all day? Those training dates?
Pretty much. The library opens at 9:30. So we are 9:30 till about 4.
Okay, because there were no times on the last email that I have. So it's 9:30 to 4. Okay.
Yeah. And all of that, I'll get through my slides and more information will come out about that.
Great. Thank you.
Second year counselors. These are people who are our class of 24. These are the folks that were you guys last year. And they have their own training. But that training is also appropriate for people who've been in the program in the past and are coming back, need to brush things up, or professionals that need to brush up on their tax law. It's a few days in person and some self-study. An example is that as a first year counselor, we don't ever expect you to do an amended return. But as a second year counselor, you might. So we'll offer training on how to do amended returns. If you're coming to us from the professional world, you probably don't know how to do tax returns amended returns in TaxSlayer. So that would be an appropriate training for you. And experienced preparers are people who have been doing this for years. They mostly do self-study. We do one day in person in January where we catch up on new tax law or something that we feel like we need to really poke at. We also, with our experienced preparers, offer some online opportunities, which are optional, where we say, we're doing a class on home sales on January 15th. Come in virtually if you want to. For all of our experienced preparers, whether they are our program or coming in from the paid world or coming in from VITA, you really have to focus on scope, because our scope is limited. And as I said before, you need to stay in scope to be protected by the Volunteer Protection Act. And honestly, I don't want you to do an out-of-scope return this year and have that guy come back next year yelling at me because I won't do it for him. So please make sure that you're staying in scope. Nate.
Amy, this year, the intake and interview form is completely different.
Everybody's getting trained on that this year.
Okay, that's what my question is, when I come in, because I looked at it, there are actually good things about it, but I think, whatever day you do that, please let me know.
Yeah, I think you're going to like it. And Susan and Susan, who are both on this call, are in charge of that training. Was that you trying to take down your hand? Because it's up again, Nate.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It comes off automatically when you start to talk.
Look.
So some of your resources during our training will be a student manual, which I'll email after this meeting. It has everything related to training, lots of links, lots of resources, contact information for us. It's a good idea to just, at the beginning, just flip through it and see what's in it. And then later on, you'll be going back to it more carefully because, for example, all of your homework's in it. Your mentor is going to be a resource for you. When possible, your mentor will be at your site, will be a person who works at the site that you will be assigned to. That's not always possible. That mentor will attend some of the training with you. and will be available by phone or by Google Meet if you need to be able to share a screen to look at something. So please make sure that you are developing a relationship with your mentor. I am a resource. My address is here. Again, you'll get this thing, so you'll have all this information. You don't need to write it down. Most of you already have it. And I am the training coordinator. If you have a broad question, it should go to me. If you have a more specific question, you might want to ask the instructor that covered that topic. All right, before we get to Practice Lab, I'm going to go back to our earlier conversation about the 4012. There are lots of training resources, which I did not list here. And the one that you might be familiar with from VITA is the 4012, which is the everything Bible that has all of the information about the text topics that are in scope for us. Because we do not have the exact same scope as VITA, and because some of our people really like to explain things, there is a modified 4012 available for you guys. That is put out by our National Tax Training Committee, which I'm going to point out is all volunteers. That committee works tirelessly to keep up on tax law changes and to make sure that there is training available on anything you might need training for. They do videos, they do worksheets, they do tests and quizzes, they do a workbook, they do the 4012, they take the IRS textbook, which is the 4491, and they modify it to be appropriate for our program. So that committee does amazing work. Steve used to chair that committee back in the day. So our 4012 is different and bigger and better than the regular 4012 that the VITA sites use. It is also on your Chromebook. So I am not certain that I can share that so that you can see it, but I'm going to try because I am an optimist. So I'm going to try to present my entire screen. No one is allowed to make fun of me for the amount of tabs that I have open. So this is my screen that I have my PowerPoint on. And can you see where I'm wiggling my cursor up where it says tax aid links?
Yes.
Okay. So if you click that and you go to tax prep and training, and we're going to go to the training resource links down here. It says NTTC training resource links. Then I can open the NTTC 4012 right here. And when I have this, for those of you that have seen the VITA version, it looks the same, except for it has extra stuff on it. And this is the book of everything. This electronic version is awesome. And I will just give you a quick look at it. One of the ways that you can look things up is via the table of contents. So if I want to look up wages, I can go to the index, W, wages, C form W2. And now it's going to take me to the table of contents, form W2. Here are all these topics. Actually, this is the index on the W2. And I'm just going to go down to this one, D8, which is tax layer entry. So it gives us information about the W2, and it tells us what it looks like in tax layer and how to make those entries. And you can see there's a 2 and a 3. There's going to be instructions then of how to do those. And here are numbers down here that show that. Most things that you do all the time, you're going to know how to do. But when you see something unusual, you're going to pull out this 4012 and get to what you need to know. Now, let's say I didn't want to look in the index. Instead, I wanted to just find something. And let's say it's, I'm going to use it because I just saw the word alimony. I can do a Control F and find alimony. And there are 31 instances. It starts in the table of contents. And then you can see it shows up all over the place, all the different places where you might have to learn something about alimony. So you can use Control F to find things as well. The 4012 is our single most useful tool. It's amazing and I love it. And you will love it too. But I'm pretty sure I just lost my presentation. But that's okay, because what I was going to do is just show you TaxSlayer, which is our tax software. And I'm just going to give you a peek at it. So we're going to go to Window, and we're going to do that one.
While Amy's doing that, I will say that the 4012, you will use the electronic version of the 4012.
It's the only one you'll have.
That's the only one you'll have.
There is a paper version. There will be one paper version at your site. The purpose of it, and the paper version is not the NTTC one, so it's not the good one. But the purpose of it is sometimes it is easier to copy things out of it or to show the taxpayer on paper than it is to have them read the screens, because some of our taxpayers don't read screens very well. So when we go, again, on your Chromebook, I can just go up to these TaxAid links and choose TaxSlayer. So I don't even have to know the website. I can just get right there. When you guys are working, you'll be working in Practice Lab. Once we're in production, you'll go to Pro Online, but we're in Practice Lab because we're practicing. And you know what? I just did the thing I said I wasn't going to do. Most of you, and most of all of our volunteers, get to these pages and don't look any further, but I'm going to try to show you some other stuff that's on here. So Practice Lab, there is a place where you have to enter a password. It has been the same password for years. It is Train Pro Web, all in caps. You'll get that later. And then I do have my practice password saved because there's no taxpayer information in my Practice Lab. So most of you will get to this page and go to practice area and will never look at the rest of the page. Today, you get to look at the rest of the page. A lot of it is information that you don't need, but if you get down to section 4, there are a ton of guides to preparing a return. So if you ever get stuck and you can't remember how to enter something, you can come down here and watch a short video on it. And this one, yeah, this one does have like the information about amended returns and things like that. On this side, on miscellaneous, there are practice returns. So if you get through the workbook that you're going to get and you want to do more returns, you want to, try one more, you can get into these practice returns to look at. All of this is on that home page. But like I said, most people never scroll down. So once we're in the lab, we go to the practice area. And the practice lab looks exactly like production. So this is exactly what it looks like when you're in production. We're in tax year 24. And you can see that I can start a new return, or I can do client search to look at a return that I've already started. If I want to do a different year, I can change the tax year. Because Pennsylvania is not yet loaded into 24, all of the work I've done so far is in 23. So if I go to client search, there is nothing there. See, 0 returns, no data. But if I want to start a new return, I'm going to select and I'm going to put in a social security number, and these are fake numbers. So as long as I make them match, it doesn't matter that that it's not a real number.
And while she's doing that, by default, the middle 2 digits are 00 because that is never the middle 2 digits of a real social security number.
That's what makes it fake. So now this is loading up for my new return that I just invented with that social security number I just invented. And it says, and this is something that is pertinent to us, certain calculations could change as the IRS continues to finalize instructions for tax year 24. So right now, it's possible that you could do a return in the practice lab and get the wrong answer. And if you did the return on paper, you would get the right answer. And it's because there are certain certain numbers that the IRS gives you every year, like the poverty level. This is still using 2023 numbers because the 2024 numbers aren't official yet. But if you did it on paper, you would look up the 2024 number because it's out there. It's just not official. So it isn't in TaxSlayer yet. It probably will be by the end of January, and it will be fine by the time we get to production. There are also issues with the Affordable Care Act. Same thing, the numbers don't always come out right. And the state sales tax, there's something there that often is behind. So that's fine. We'll continue. And by the way, that continue button, get used to it. You're going to continue a lot. The first thing it's going to ask is filing status. We're going to do a single person.
Never use it.
Okay, so then we're going to put in this primary taxpayer's name, his social security number's in there. We'll give him a birth date. Lucky him, he's retired. And then lots of check boxes that we have to fill in if they apply. In this case, none of them will apply to our guy. And he lives, yeah, he lives there. We've got his phone number, which is that. And then it's, do I have any dependents? He does not have any dependents. We have had a full interview with him and determined that the only person that lives with him is his cat.
Person who lives with him.
That's the person who lives with him. Okay. So this is, well, once I get this far, then I can show you this. So now we're in the federal section, and you can see it's underlined here, income. We're in the income section, and there is all of our entries that we might need to make for income. So the W-2, a 1099-G, interest and dividends, the 1099-Rs, the Social Security, Schedule C, all of the stuff that he might need is in here. There are things in here that are out of scope for us. So just because there's a box doesn't mean you should press it and fill it.
We don't do farming, for example.
Right. So we're not going to do any Schedule F. Once we're through with his income, we're going to look at his deductions. And deductions includes adjustments. And these are all showing up again. All of his adjustments are here, the standard deduction or itemized deduction, any credits, anything that brings money back the other way is going to be on the deductions menu. So you can see I can go between my entries and the screens and this little, I don't know what you call these things, that lets us this menu that lets us navigate. We've got some other taxes there. There we go. Payments and estimates, if they made estimated payments, and then miscellaneous forms. Health insurance, which is our basically our ACA section. And then there's a state section, which I'm not going to click because it's not there yet, but that will get us our Pennsylvania return. When we're done with everything, we'll go to the e-file section. If we want to look at what we've done, we can go to summary print and take a look at what we've put in so far. So that's sort of the navigation of TaxSlayer. And you can see, we'll, you know, obviously we'll cover it more in training, but it's pretty straightforward. There's not too many gotchas here. And the other thing I should have said this. The other thing is there is a form finder up here. So if we need to find a form that we're not sure where it is, we can put in the name of the form. So we can put in something like education to get it to a 1099Q, or to educator expenses, or a 1098T. Or I could just put in 1098T, and that will pull up my tuition statement. So you can get to the forms a couple of different ways. Um, I want you to open. Why aren't you opening?